In the small, forgotten town of Cedar Creek, single dad Dylan Hayes struggles to make ends meet as a mechanic while raising his young daughter, Ava. One rainy afternoon, he stops to help a sophisticated woman stranded with car trouble. Fixing her car without asking for anything in return, Dylan sends her on her way, unaware he just assisted Elena Montgomery, the wealthy heiress of a global empire. When Elena unexpectedly shows up at Dylan's humble garage days later, he anticipates nothing more than gratitude. Instead, she brings a surprising proposal, one he never saw coming, a wedding proposal. Could a simple act of kindness turn into the love story of a lifetime? If you believe in destiny, second chances, and the power of kindness, stay until the end, because this story is about to remind you why true love can happen when you least expect it. Now, let's begin. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The morning sun had barely risen over the sleepy town of Cedar Creek when Dylan Hayes gently shook his daughter awake. The bedroom was small, modest, decorated with colorful drawings taped to the wall, masterpieces created by Ava, his 8-year-old daughter. He forced a reassuring smile, though anxiety tightened his chest. "Come on, sweetheart. We gotta hurry today, all right?" Dylan spoke softly, his voice still heavy with sleep. Ava rubbed her eyes, nodding sleepily. "Did you get breakfast, Daddy?" He hesitated, the fridge nearly empty. Payday still 3 days away. "Yeah, peanut butter sandwiches again today. Your favorite, right?" She smiled brightly, never complaining, even though Dylan saw the quiet longing in her eyes for something more, something better. Outside, their beat-up pickup truck sputtered to life, reluctantly shaking off the morning chill. Dylan felt a pang of worry. How long could he keep patching it up? Every unexpected repair was another month of late rent, another month of scraping by. As he drove Ava to school, Dylan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Her face pressed against the cold window, lost in innocent thought. She deserved so much more than he could provide. He clenched the steering wheel tighter, the leather worn thin from years of anxious grips. At Cedar Creek Elementary, Dylan watched Ava sprint joyfully toward her friends, her little pink backpack bouncing as she ran. Watching her vanish safely inside, he exhaled a shaky breath, momentarily allowing himself to feel the exhaustion he'd been hiding. When he arrived at his tiny auto shop, tucked between empty storefronts, the bills piled high on the battered desk greeted him coldly. The silence weighed heavily as he glanced around the shop, tools rusting, equipment outdated, dreams of expansion abandoned. Dylan closed his eyes, head heavy in his hands. He was fighting daily, scraping to make it to the next paycheck. But it felt like no matter how hard he worked, it was never enough. His phone vibrated, startling him from his thoughts. A text from his landlord flashed on the cracked screen. Rent overdue again. Dylan sank back into the old office chair, the weight of responsibility pressing relentlessly upon his shoulders. He couldn't fail Ava. She deserved better. But he didn't know how much longer he could keep this up. Heavy clouds had gathered over Cedar Creek, releasing a relentless downpour that transformed the dusty roads into shallow rivers. Dylan squinted through the windshield, wipers barely clearing the water that obscured his view. The old pickup rattled uneasily, protesting the storm, as if it too was exhausted by life's relentless demands. He was headed home after a draining day, shoulders aching, clothes stained with grease, when something ahead caught his eye. Through sheets of rain, a sleek luxury sedan sat silently, hazard lights blinking weakly in the twilight. Dylan slowed instinctively, curiosity overtaking exhaustion. Vehicles like that rarely appeared around Cedar Creek. As he eased to a stop, Dylan could see the vague silhouette of someone inside, clearly struggling to figure out what was wrong. He sighed softly, knowing he couldn't just pass by, not when someone needed help. Flipping up the hood of his worn jacket, Dylan stepped out into the pounding rain. "Hey, everything all right?" he called over the downpour, approaching cautiously. The driver's side window lowered slowly, revealing a woman whose elegance seemed unaffected by the chaos of the storm. Dark hair cascaded around her shoulders, dampened slightly from the drizzle sneaking inside. Even in her clear distress, she carried herself with a dignity that seemed strangely out of place on this muddy road. "Honestly? No," she said, frustration evident beneath her calm exterior. "I don't know cars, and my phone has no signal. Perfect end to my day." Dylan offered a gentle smile, sensing her unease. "Mind if I take a look?" Relief visibly softened her features. "Please." He quickly moved to the front, popping open the hood and scanning the engine. Rainwater dripped from his hair, chilling him to the bone as he examined the car's sleek machinery. It didn't take long to identify the issue, a loose battery connection, something simple enough to fix quickly. As he tightened the connection, his mind drifted briefly, wondering who this woman was and why she found herself stranded in Cedar Creek. Shaking off his curiosity, Dylan finished swiftly, closed the hood, and approached her window again. "You're all set," he announced, rain streaming down his face. "Just a loose battery cable. Easy fix." Her eyes widened in grateful surprise. "Thank you so much. What do I owe you?" He shook his head immediately, sincerity shining through the rainwater dripping from his face. "Nothing at all. Just drive safe, all right?" She paused, clearly taken aback, then nodded softly. "Thank you, really." As Dylan returned to his truck, soaked and shivering, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just encountered someone who would alter the course of his life forever, even if he didn't yet understand how. Dylan wiped the rainwater from his forehead, his fingers numb from the chill, yet he managed a reassuring smile as he closed the hood of the sleek sedan. The metallic thud echoed softly, a clear signal that the car was ready for the road again. Elena watched him from inside, eyes tracing his movements with quiet appreciation and curiosity. Slowly she opened the door and stepped out, carefully avoiding the puddles that had formed around her polished heels. Her gaze met Dylan's, sincere gratitude reflecting in her deep brown eyes. She reached into her purse, pulling out an elegant leather wallet. "Please tell me how much I owe you," she said firmly, her voice calm yet authoritative. "You've really saved me tonight." Dylan hesitated for a brief moment, his mind involuntarily flashing to the stack of unpaid bills waiting for him at home. The electricity bill past due, groceries he hadn't yet bought, and the late rent, each pressing urgently against his pride. The money Elena offered could mean an easier week, perhaps even a full fridge for Ava. But something inside him wouldn't let him accept. He met Elena's earnest gaze with quiet sincerity. "No charge. It was just a loose cable, barely took me any time at all." Surprise flashed across her elegant features. Her brow furrowed slightly, the wallet still extended toward him. "But it means a great deal to me. At least take something." Dylan shook his head again softly but firmly. "Honestly, I didn't stop to get paid. You needed help. I could give it. That's all." Elena studied him intently, rain still gently falling, creating silvery trails across her flawless complexion. The warmth of Dylan's kindness was a stark contrast to the cool drizzle. It was clear she wasn't accustomed to encountering generosity that asked for nothing in return. "Are you sure?" Elena finally whispered, her voice quieter now, genuinely moved by his act of kindness. "I'm sure," Dylan assured her, managing a genuine smile. "Just pay it forward." Elena smiled back, a soft, gentle smile that transformed her usually poised and reserved expression into something beautifully genuine. Dylan felt a warmth in his chest, the weight of his struggles briefly lifting. "Thank you, Dylan," Elena said softly, her tone genuine and filled with respect. "I won't forget this." She stepped gracefully back into her car, and moments later, Dylan watched as the taillights faded into the misty darkness. As he climbed back into his old truck, cold and drenched, yet oddly hopeful, Dylan realized he had no idea just how much that simple act of kindness would change everything. The steady rhythm of raindrops beating against her windshield matched the gentle, thoughtful pulse that lingered in Elena's mind. As the luxury sedan glided smoothly through the upscale neighborhood leading to her expansive estate, her thoughts stubbornly circled back to Dylan Hayes, his quiet humility, worn-out jacket, rain-soaked kindness. It was a sharp contrast to her world, one that Elena had grown increasingly weary of, a life filled with polished marble halls, elegant parties, and conversations laced with hidden agendas. As she pulled into her driveway, Elena gazed up at the sprawling mansion, illuminated softly in the night. It had always represented success and privilege, yet tonight, for the first time, it felt hollow, almost lonely. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floors as she walked through the foyer, the echo highlighting how empty the house felt. Her reflection in the ornate mirror caught her eye, elegant dress slightly damp, hair tousled from the rain, makeup smudged softly beneath tired eyes. She thought again of Dylan's kind face, his refusal of her money, his gentle insistence to pay it forward. A mechanic from Cedar Creek who had nothing to gain from helping her, and yet he had done so willingly, expecting nothing in return. Elena had spent her entire life navigating a world built on favors, exchanges, and transactions. Genuine generosity, like Dylan's, was a rarity she'd almost forgotten existed. In her luxurious study, she sank onto the leather sofa, slipping off her expensive heels and rubbing her aching feet. Her eyes drifted to the collection of framed photographs, her family, the board of directors, influential figures from her company. Yet tonight, those polished smiles felt artificial. Dylan's sincerity had shaken something within her, awakened a quiet desire she'd buried beneath ambition and expectation. Why had his kindness touched her so deeply? She closed her eyes, recalling how effortlessly Dylan had rejected payment, how he had smiled genuinely in the rain, his eyes bright despite clear exhaustion. It wasn't just generosity, it was integrity, something that couldn't be bought or learned in boardrooms or exclusive universities. For the first time in a very long while, Elena felt the stirrings of genuine admiration, and perhaps something even deeper. As the rain softened outside, Elena sat quietly, a newfound curiosity burning within her, wondering if the mechanic from Cedar Creek realized just how deeply he had already changed her perspective. Sunlight seeped through the cracked blinds of Dylan's modest bedroom, slicing across his tired features as the shrill ring of his alarm jolted him awake. Groggily, he sat up, running a weary hand through disheveled hair. For a fleeting moment, he recalled the stormy night, the elegant woman with her expensive car, and how her grateful smile had lingered in his mind. But daylight had a way of fading dreams, and reality soon set in once more, heavy and relentless. In the tiny kitchen, Dylan rummaged through the near-empty pantry, his heart sinking as he pulled out the same half-empty jar of peanut butter and stale bread. He assembled Ava's sandwich quietly, guilt gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. Ava deserved better, but life hadn't been easy lately, and he felt helpless against the relentless tide of bills and debt. "Daddy!" Ava's bright voice broke through the silence, and she skipped into the kitchen, her smile wide and innocent. She slid onto her chair, legs swinging excitedly beneath the table. "Can we have pancakes this weekend?" He hesitated, chest tightening painfully. Dylan forced a smile, trying to hide the uncertainty in his eyes. "We'll see, baby. Money's tight this week, but I promise soon, okay?" She nodded, understanding beyond her years, though he hated that she had to. The tightness in his chest intensified as he watched her eat the plain sandwich, her cheerful expression unyielding despite their circumstances. After dropping Ava off at school, Dylan arrived at his humble auto shop to find the usual chaos awaiting him. Oil-stained rags littered the garage, the smell of gasoline and rubber filling the air. His hands, still sore from yesterday's repairs, moved almost automatically as he tackled the long list of tasks scribbled hastily on a worn clipboard. But as the day wore on, Dylan couldn't quite shake thoughts of Elena. The elegance of her appearance, the soft vulnerability in her voice, so different from his world. Why had someone like her made such an impression? She probably hadn't given him a second thought, he convinced himself, returning his focus stubbornly to the leaking radiator he was repairing. As evening approached and exhaustion settled heavily into his bones, Dylan locked the garage, readying himself for the drive home in the rusted pickup. His life was ordinary, his struggles familiar, nothing glamorous or exciting like the world Elena clearly belonged to. He shook his head, dismissing the strange longing that tugged gently at his heart. How could he know, as he drove through the quiet streets of Cedar Creek, that the generosity he'd shown a stranger would soon return to him in ways he'd never imagined possible? The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting Cedar Creek in gentle shades of amber and gold. Dylan wiped the grease from his hands, his muscles aching from hours spent beneath the hood of an aging truck. The day had been long and unforgiving, just like every other. He sighed heavily, tossing the worn rag onto the cluttered workbench and stretching his sore back. A soft bell chimed gently at the front of the garage, signaling that someone had entered the small, cramped office. "I'll be right there," Dylan called out, expecting another familiar face from town, needing some quick fix before dinner. He ran a weary hand over his face, leaving faint smudges of grime across his brow as he pushed open the office door. His breath caught sharply, surprise flickering across his tired features as he took in the sight before him. Elena Montgomery stood just inside the doorway, her poised elegance as out of place in his modest garage as fine crystal on a picnic table. She wore a tailored coat that hugged her slender frame, and her eyes immediately found his, lit with gentle amusement at his evident shock. "Elena," he managed, quickly composing himself and stepping forward, "I didn't expect to see you again." She smiled warmly, an expression soft enough to reach even her guarded eyes. "Honestly, I didn't think I would find myself back here either, but something kept bringing me back." Dylan raised an eyebrow, both curious and guarded, unsure of her intentions. She seemed so out of place, surrounded by stacks of used tires, old car parts, and the faint scent of motor oil. He felt suddenly self-conscious, painfully aware of his stained clothes, the dirt under his fingernails, and the humble surroundings that never bothered him before. "Is the car still giving you trouble?" he asked cautiously. Elena shook her head softly, stepping deeper into the garage, eyes glancing around with a quiet appreciation. "No, the car is fine, thanks to you. I'm here because I wanted to thank you again, properly." Dylan shifted uneasily, a flush rising slightly beneath the grime on his cheeks. "You didn't have to come all the way out here for that." She stepped closer, sincerity etched deeply into her delicate features. "Actually, I did. Your kindness meant a lot to me, Dylan. People like you, generous, genuine, they're rare, especially in my world." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Dylan's pulse quickened slightly, the sincerity in her voice resonating deeply within him, but confusion still lingered. Why was someone like her here, standing in his run-down garage, looking at him as if he held answers she'd been searching for? He finally broke the quiet tension, his voice soft yet cautious. "Is that really all?" Elena hesitated, an unreadable emotion flickering briefly across her face. She took a gentle breath before responding. "Maybe not entirely. Can we talk?" Dylan hesitated for only a heartbeat before nodding slowly, curiosity winning out over caution. "Of course." As he gestured for her to sit, Dylan felt the quiet stirrings of something shifting in his life, a subtle realization that Elena Montgomery's unexpected visit might just change everything. Sunset filtered softly through the smudged windows of Dylan's cramped office, painting the small space in shades of copper and muted gold. Elena sat poised, her posture impossibly graceful even in the worn metal chair across from Dylan's cluttered desk. She seemed calm, composed, yet Dylan noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders and the faint, nervous tap of her manicured fingertips against her thigh. "You said you wanted to talk?" Dylan asked cautiously, feeling his pulse quicken at the mystery behind her visit. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed protectively across his chest, uncertain of what she was about to say. Elena met his gaze steadily, hesitating only briefly before she spoke. "Dylan, I've come to you today with an unusual proposal, one I'm certain you weren't expecting." He arched an eyebrow, confusion shadowing his face. "A proposal?" She nodded, exhaling slowly as she gathered her thoughts. "You helped me without expecting anything in return. Your integrity, your generosity, made a lasting impression. I need someone like you in my life." Dylan's brows knitted together in confusion. "I'm not sure I understand. Someone like me?" Elena shifted forward slightly, her voice dropping lower, sincere and vulnerable. "My father built Montgomery Industries from nothing. Now that he's passed, the board is pressuring me to marry, believing stability in my personal life will ensure confidence from investors and stakeholders. But the men I've encountered are all after power or money. I can't trust any of them." She paused, eyes searching his. "But I trust you, Dylan." Stunned silence filled the room. Dylan felt his chest tighten, disbelief swirling in his thoughts. "Are you asking me to marry you?" His voice came out quieter than intended, edged with disbelief. Elena nodded slowly, her gaze unwavering. "Yes, but listen, it would initially be a business arrangement, something to secure my position. You and your daughter would be provided for completely. Education, living expenses, financial security beyond anything you currently have, and in return, you would give me your honesty, your integrity, your presence." Dylan shook his head, overwhelmed, pacing briefly before facing her again. "This is Elena. People don't do this. Marry someone they barely know just to satisfy some business condition." Her eyes softened, understanding his hesitation. "I know it's a lot. I know it sounds crazy, but I need someone genuine by my side. I know your heart, Dylan. I felt it when you helped me. You wouldn't take advantage of this situation, and I trust that you won't let me down." He exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the desk, his mind spinning. Ava's face flashed before his eyes, the struggles, the late nights worrying over bills, the pain of constantly falling short. Elena was offering a solution to problems he had long felt powerless to fix. Yet pride tightened his throat. "I don't know, Elena. It just doesn't feel right, accepting something like this, even if it's temporary." She rose slowly, stepping closer, sincerity etched into her gentle features. "Just think about it, Dylan. That's all I'm asking." She placed a business card softly on his desk, her voice gentle yet firm. "Call me when you've made your decision." Elena gave him one last look, her eyes filled with quiet hope and uncertainty, before disappearing out the door. Dylan stood there frozen, heart racing, mind overwhelmed, staring at the small white card that held the power to alter his life completely. The old kitchen table creaked softly beneath Dylan's weight as he stared down at Elena's pristine business card, now worn at the edges from hours of anxious handling. Ava had long since fallen asleep in her small bedroom down the hall, oblivious to her father's restless night. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, a rhythmic reminder of time slipping through his fingers. Dylan sighed deeply, rubbing his tired eyes with grease-stained fingertips. Elena's proposal echoed in his thoughts. A marriage arrangement, financial security, education for Ava, freedom from relentless debt. Yet each thought brought with it a sharp sting of pride and a lingering discomfort. The idea of entering into marriage, even as a business arrangement, felt strangely dishonest. He had always fought his battles alone, carrying the weight of responsibility on his shoulders without relying on shortcuts. Still, he couldn't shake Elena's sincerity from his mind. The vulnerability beneath her composed exterior, her quiet confidence, As she explained her desperate situation, she had trusted him, a stranger, with a proposal that required mutual honesty and respect. But was it right to accept this chance, knowing it came from desperation rather than genuine affection? The silence of the house pressed heavily around him, amplifying his worries. He glanced toward Ava's room, heart aching. His daughter deserved more than he could currently offer. A stable home, good schools, a future not limited by overdue bills and constant sacrifices. Elena's offer promised everything Ava needed, wrapped neatly in a package that challenged everything Dylan believed. With restless energy, Dylan rose, pacing slowly around the cramped kitchen. Memories flooded his mind, late nights spent patching holes in worn shoes, pretending the lights went out because of a storm rather than unpaid bills. Ava's innocent questions about why they couldn't afford to do things her classmates did without thinking. The weight of guilt tightened painfully in his chest. What kind of father would he be if he refused an opportunity simply because of pride? But what kind of man would he become if he accepted it? Exhaustion pulled at Dylan as he returned to the kitchen chair, closing his eyes briefly. A faint echo of Elena's words resonated once more, gentle yet powerful. "I trust you." Those three simple words felt heavier now than ever. Finally, Dylan took a deep breath, resolve steadying the tremors in his hands. He picked up the phone, glancing once more at Ava's sleeping figure through the partially open door before dialing Elena's number. As the phone began to ring softly in the quiet room, Dylan knew there was no turning back. For better or worse, his decision had been made. The winding driveway leading up to Elena's sprawling estate felt endless, lined with perfectly manicured hedges and flowering gardens that seemed to glow beneath the late afternoon sun. Dylan gripped the steering wheel tightly, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. Beside him, Ava pressed her tiny face to the window, eyes wide with awe and excitement. He felt a pang deep within his chest, part hope, part guilt, as he glanced at his daughter, silently praying he'd made the right choice. As they parked in front of the imposing mansion, Dylan's breath caught in his throat. The vastness of the home overwhelmed him. It was a stark contrast to their modest apartment in Cedar Creek. He stepped out of the truck, feeling suddenly self-conscious about his worn boots and faded jeans. But before he could retreat into self-doubt, the front door opened and Elena appeared, framed by the ornate doorway. Her expression was gentle, understanding, as she walked gracefully toward them. "Welcome," she said softly, her voice warm and inviting. Ava shyly stepped out from behind her father, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit tightly. Elena knelt down, meeting Ava's hesitant gaze with a tender smile. "You must be Ava. I've heard so much about you." Ava nodded, a cautious smile spreading across her face. "Are we really staying here?" "Yes," Elena said softly, a reassuring confidence radiating from her presence. "And you can decorate your room however you'd like. Would you like to see it?" Ava glanced at Dylan, who nodded gently, silently encouraging her forward. Elena extended her hand and Ava accepted it tentatively, excitement slowly overtaking her nervousness. As they walked together toward the mansion, Ava's laughter echoed softly in the evening air, a beautiful sound Dylan hadn't heard often enough. Left alone briefly beside the truck, Dylan exhaled slowly, the gravity of the moment pressing heavily on his chest. Accepting Elena's proposal meant embracing a world he hardly recognized. Luxury, privilege, and a marriage built on practicality rather than love. He glanced toward the grand entrance where Elena and Ava had disappeared, emotions conflicting sharply within him. Finally summoning courage he wasn't sure he had, Dylan walked slowly toward the house. Inside, everything felt surreal. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers, artwork lined the walls, the scent of polished wood lingering in the air. He felt like an outsider, standing awkwardly in a world far beyond his reach. Yet Elena's gentle voice calling his name drew him forward, her reassuring smile cutting through the uncertainty. She stood at the foot of an elegant staircase, Ava already racing upstairs, laughter trailing behind her. "It'll take time," Elena said quietly, her eyes filled with understanding. "But I promise we'll figure it out." Dylan nodded, taking a deep breath. The reality of their new beginning settled around him, both frightening and strangely comforting. For Ava, he knew he could find a way to navigate this new life, no matter how uncertain the path ahead might be. The early morning sunlight streamed through tall arched windows, casting golden patterns across the polished floors of Elena's luxurious home. Dylan stood uncertainly at the edge of the massive kitchen, staring blankly at the array of gleaming appliances that he barely knew how to operate. His reflection caught briefly in the polished stainless steel. A tired face, creased with doubt and uncertainty, stared back at him. Everywhere he turned, reminders of Elena's world pressed against him, each luxurious detail emphasizing how far he was from the simplicity he'd always known. Breakfast had always been cereal or toast hastily eaten at a small chipped table. Now he faced marble countertops, lined with exotic fruits, artisan pastries, and freshly brewed espresso he didn't dare touch. The discomfort twisted inside his chest. He wanted to belong, to make this work for Ava's sake, but he felt hopelessly out of place. As he hesitated, the soft tap of heels echoed across the expansive room. Elena appeared, impeccably dressed even at this early hour, her calm presence immediately filling the space. "Good morning, Dylan," she greeted warmly, offering a reassuring smile. Her eyes quickly picked up his unease. "Everything all right?" He shifted awkwardly, forcing a weak smile. "Just still trying to wrap my head around all this." Her expression softened. "It takes time, Dylan. I understand it's overwhelming, but you'll get used to it." His eyes dropped briefly, embarrassment creeping into his voice. "I'm not sure luxury suits someone like me." Elena stepped closer, her tone gentle yet firm. "I didn't choose you for your ability to navigate luxury. I chose you because you're real, because of who you are. That matters more to me than whether you know how to use a fancy coffee machine." He chuckled softly, grateful for her attempt to ease the tension, but the lingering feeling of inadequacy still gnawed at his gut. "I just don't want Ava growing up thinking this is normal, that life is easy." Elena nodded in quiet understanding. "We won't let that happen. She'll still have her values, Dylan. You'll see to that." The silence stretched softly between them, filled only by the faint hum of appliances and the distant sound of Ava exploring her new home upstairs. Finally, Elena gently reached out, touching Dylan's arm lightly. He startled slightly at her touch, feeling an unexpected warmth course through him. "I know this is difficult," she said softly, sincerity clear in her gaze, "but you're not alone here. We'll adjust together." Her words steadied him, and Dylan slowly nodded, inhaling deeply to gather his resolve. His voice was quiet, yet determined. "All right." Elena's eyes sparkled with quiet encouragement as she stepped back, allowing him space. "Now, let me show you how this ridiculously complicated coffee machine works." Dylan laughed softly, the tension easing slightly from his shoulders. And though he still felt uncertain, her warmth and understanding gave him hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn to belong in Elena's world after all. The elegant banquet hall buzzed softly with the murmurs of well-dressed guests, champagne glasses clinking delicately as laughter and whispered gossip floated through the air. Dylan tugged anxiously at the collar of his newly tailored suit, discomfort etched plainly across his face. He'd never felt more out of place, surrounded by sparkling gowns and tailored tuxedos, amidst whispers about investments, stock portfolios, and exotic vacations, conversations that felt impossibly distant from his own experience. Beside him, Elena moved gracefully through the crowd, her confident presence effortlessly commanding attention. She had gently looped her arm through Dylan's, her touch intended to reassure him, but he still felt the weight of countless curious gazes burning into his back. "Relax," Elena murmured softly, sensing his tension. Her warm eyes searched his face. "You belong here, Dylan. Remember, we're in this together." He exhaled slowly, trying to shake off his unease, but as they moved deeper into the room, whispered words caught at the edges of his hearing. "Who is that?" one woman murmured, eyebrows raised in judgmental curiosity. "Just a mechanic from some small town," another whispered dismissively, skepticism clear in her voice. Dylan's chest tightened painfully. He knew these judgments shouldn't matter, yet shame and frustration rose hotly beneath his skin. He glanced toward Elena, whose careful composure only heightened his sense of inadequacy. Could he ever truly belong in her world? Suddenly, a tall man approached them, sharp eyes assessing Dylan critically before turning to Elena with a forced smile. "Elena, always a pleasure," he said smoothly, gaze drifting back to Dylan with barely concealed disdain. "And this must be your companion?" Elena's expression hardened ever so slightly, her voice cool yet measured. "Yes, this is Dylan Hayes, my fiance. Dylan, this is Marcus Davenport, one of my board members." Marcus raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident as he offered a half-hearted handshake. "A mechanic fiancé? That's certainly unexpected," he said pointedly, his tone dripping with condescension. Dylan felt a sharp pang of embarrassment, anger simmering just beneath the surface. Elena's grip on his arm tightened subtly, her presence anchoring him as she spoke firmly. "Dylan's integrity and character matter far more to me than anyone's pedigree or social status, Marcus." Marcus's smile faltered, surprise flickering in his eyes before he muttered something polite yet insincere and drifted back into the crowd. Elena turned to Dylan, eyes filled with quiet apology and gentle determination. "I'm sorry," she whispered softly. "They don't understand yet, but they will." He nodded slowly, drawing strength from her unwavering support. He knew judgment wouldn't disappear overnight. Still, standing beside Elena, he resolved not to allow whispers and skeptical glances to break him. Straightening his shoulders, Dylan gently squeezed Elena's hand, silently promising her, and himself, that despite the world's judgment, they would face it together, one step at a time. Warm sunlight filtered gently through the lace curtains of Elena's expansive living room, creating intricate patterns across the plush carpet. Dylan stood quietly at the threshold, watching Elena and Ava from a distance, hesitant to disturb the tender moment unfolding before him. At the center of the room, Elena sat cross-legged on the soft rug, her elegant demeanor momentarily softened as she focused intently on the puzzle spread across the floor. Ava knelt beside her, eyes sparkling with excitement as she held up a brightly colored puzzle piece triumphantly. "I found it!" Ava's voice was bright with pride, her small face glowing. Elena smiled warmly, a genuine joy radiating from her eyes. "Great job, Ava. You're a natural at this." Ava giggled softly, gently placing the piece into the puzzle. She looked up, her expression suddenly earnest, voice quieter as she spoke again. "Elena, do you think Daddy's happy here?" Elena's gaze softened, touched by the unexpected question. "I hope so. I know it's a big change for both of you, but I promise I'll do everything to make sure you're both happy." Ava bit her lower lip thoughtfully, eyes serious beyond her years. "I think he worries too much about me. I heard him talking once. He said he just wants to give me a better life." Elena's heart twisted gently at Ava's words, her own memories stirring beneath the surface. She reached out carefully, softly placing a comforting hand on the little girl's shoulder. "Your dad loves you very much, Ava. And you know what? I think you're both incredibly lucky to have each other." From his place in the doorway, Dylan felt warmth spread through his chest, an unfamiliar but comforting sensation. Seeing Ava bond so effortlessly with Elena eased some of the tension he'd been carrying. It was clear Elena genuinely cared about Ava, not just as a part of their arrangement, but because she saw the same bright, hopeful girl he did. Ava leaned closer to Elena, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm glad we came here. I like having you around." Elena's eyes glistened softly with emotion as she hugged Ava gently, voice steady yet tender. "Me too, Ava. More than you know." Watching them together, Dylan realized his fears about Ava adapting to this new life were beginning to ease. Elena had found a way into his daughter's heart with genuine warmth and kindness, something he hadn't dared hope for. Quietly stepping back, he leaned against the hallway wall, breathing deeply as relief and gratitude washed through him. Elena was no longer just the woman who'd offered them a chance at a new life. She was becoming someone he trusted, respected, and perhaps was even beginning to care for deeply. Soft moonlight poured through the large bay windows, casting silvery shadows across the silent mansion. Dylan stood on the balcony, leaning heavily against the stone railing, deep in thought as he gazed across the sprawling gardens. The cool night air brushed gently against his skin, offering little comfort to the confusion simmering within him. In the weeks since their arrangement had begun, Dylan had believed that the lines between them were clear, an agreement rooted in practicality, nothing more. But tonight, as memories played back vividly in his mind, he felt something deeper stirring, something he had desperately tried to suppress. Every shared glance, every soft-spoken reassurance Elena offered, lingered stubbornly within him. The way her eyes softened when she spoke to Ava, how easily laughter spilled from her lips when they were alone. Dylan's chest tightened. Was it possible he'd allowed himself to feel something real for Elena, despite their arrangement? Below, the gardens lay quiet and peaceful, yet Dylan's mind raced chaotically. The realization unsettled him, leaving him vulnerable, uncertain, and strangely hopeful. He was torn, caught between protecting his heart and acknowledging the powerful feelings Elena evoked in him. Suddenly, gentle footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Dylan turned slowly, his breath catching as Elena appeared in the doorway, her soft robe draped gracefully around her shoulders, moonlight illuminating her face in delicate silver hues. She hesitated, sensing the tension in the air, yet she stepped forward, bridging the gap between them. "You couldn't sleep either?" Elena asked softly, her voice a gentle whisper, eyes searching his carefully guarded expression. He shook his head slowly, voice quiet, edged with honesty. "No, too much on my mind." She approached carefully, stopping close enough for him to see the delicate vulnerability in her eyes. "Me too." Silence lingered between them, heavy with unspoken truths, until Elena finally broke it, her words quiet yet unmistakably sincere. "Dylan, what we have, started as an arrangement, but lately, it's felt different." Dylan's heart pounded fiercely, uncertainty clouding his thoughts. He exhaled softly, wrestling briefly with his pride before quietly admitting, "I feel it too." Her eyes widened slightly, relief and something warmer blossoming in her expression. "You do?" He nodded slowly, voice filled with quiet sincerity. "I didn't plan for this, Elena, but seeing how you are with Ava, the way you fight for what matters, it's hard not to feel something real." Her breath trembled slightly, eyes shimmering softly. "I've tried to keep it separate, but I can't deny it anymore. You've become important to me, you and Ava both." Dylan took a tentative step closer, the space between them disappearing quickly, leaving only the quiet, steady rhythm of their breathing. "Then, maybe we stop pretending." Elena's lips curved softly, eyes bright with gentle hope, as she looked up into Dylan's earnest gaze. "Maybe we do." In the quiet of the night, beneath a sky full of stars, Dylan felt the fragile walls they had built between them begin to crumble, replaced by something honest, genuine, and beautifully uncertain. Late afternoon sun seeped through the partially drawn curtains of Elena's private study, painting faint golden streaks across the polished wooden desk. Dylan hesitated in the doorway, his heart beating quicker than usual. He hadn't meant to pry, but a gentle sob he'd heard from the hallway had pulled him here, concern urging him forward. He found Elena standing by the window, her back turned, shoulders trembling ever so slightly. A framed photograph was clutched tightly in her hand. Dylan approached quietly, his presence still unnoticed. "Elena?" Dylan murmured softly, concern filling his voice. She startled slightly, quickly brushing tears from her eyes, but the raw vulnerability etched across her delicate features told him something deeply personal had shaken her. She glanced down at the picture in her hands, a painful expression flickering across her face before she finally spoke. "This is Michael, my ex-fiance." Dylan watched her carefully, sensing the depth of her pain and the reluctance to share it. "What happened?" Elena sighed, her voice a fragile whisper. "I thought he loved me. I trusted him completely. But it was never about love for Michael. He wanted control over Montgomery Industries, power, money. When my father passed away, I found out he'd been orchestrating a takeover behind my back. He lied to me from the very beginning." Her voice broke slightly, eyes glistening with fresh tears. "I haven't trusted anyone since. Not until you." Dylan felt a pang deep within his chest, understanding dawning with painful clarity. Elena's guarded demeanor, her careful planning, her reluctance to open up, it all made sense now. She wasn't cold or distant. She was wounded, betrayed by someone who had used love as a weapon. "I'm so sorry, Elena," he said softly, stepping closer. His voice was gentle yet firm. "You didn't deserve that." She offered a weak smile, trembling slightly. "I built walls around myself after that. This arrangement, it was safe, controlled, no chance for betrayal or hurt. But somehow, you slipped through those walls." Dylan reached out instinctively, gently placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, feeling the soft tension beneath his fingertips. "Not everyone's like him. You deserve real love, Elena. Genuine, honest love." Elena's gaze met his, eyes searching his face desperately, vulnerability raw in her expression. "I want to believe that. And when I'm around you, I do." For a long moment they stood silently, the quiet broken only by Elena's soft, uneven breathing. Finally, she exhaled deeply, surrendering some of the burden she'd carried alone for too long. "Thank you, Dylan, for listening, for understanding." He nodded slowly, sincerity filling his voice. "You're not alone anymore." Elena's fingers brushed gently against his, accepting his comfort and support. And as Dylan stood beside her, understanding her past, and feeling the trust she'd given him, he knew that what had begun as a simple arrangement had become far more meaningful and far more dangerous to his heart than he'd ever imagined. The city lights glimmered softly beneath the velvet evening sky, casting a gentle glow around the cozy, intimate restaurant Elena had chosen for their first true night out together. Dylan glanced nervously across the candlelit table, noticing the way the soft, flickering glow highlighted the warmth in Elena's eyes and the slight curve of her smile. Away from the pressures of their daily lives, here, in this quiet, secluded corner, everything felt different, real. "I hope this isn't too much," Elena murmured softly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "I just wanted us to have a moment alone, without expectations, without pretense." Dylan's eyes softened, appreciating the sincerity of her words. "It's perfect. Honestly, I haven't done anything like this in, well, forever." She smiled softly, her eyes brightening with quiet amusement. "Me either. Not genuinely, anyway. Not with someone I actually wanted to be with." His heart stuttered slightly at her confession, and Dylan found himself suddenly aware of every detail, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way her dark hair cascaded gently over her shoulder, the nervousness she tried to hide behind her poised exterior. "You know," he began quietly, meeting her eyes across the flickering candlelight, "when we first agreed to this, I was so sure it would just be a business arrangement. Simple, straightforward, temporary." Elena nodded slowly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "And now?" He hesitated briefly, feeling a quiet warmth spreading through his chest. "Now, I find myself wanting things to be complicated, real, more than just an arrangement." She reached across the table, gently placing her hand over his, their fingertips brushing softly. Her voice was tender, almost fragile. "Me too. You make me feel safe, Dylan, like I can finally let go and trust someone again." His throat tightened slightly, touched deeply by her admission. "You deserve to trust someone, Elena, and I want to be that person." Their eyes held, silence deepening the connection, and for the first time they let the truth of their feelings sit openly between them, honest and vulnerable. Later, as they walked together beneath the soft glow of streetlights, Dylan's fingers brushed gently against hers, tentatively intertwining. Elena paused, looking up at him with a soft, vulnerable smile. "This feels good, right?" He squeezed her hand gently, heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and newfound clarity. "It does." Standing beneath the quiet glow of a solitary street lamp, Elena leaned softly into him, her head resting gently against his shoulder. Dylan wrapped an arm around her, feeling their breathing sink as they lingered quietly in the moment. For both of them, the uncertainty and anxiety of their pasts seemed to fade, replaced by the fragile yet beautiful beginning of something genuine. Dylan knew their path wouldn't be simple, but tonight, with Elena in his arms, he knew one thing for certain. He was willing to fight for this, for them, no matter what came next. Warm sunlight spilled gently through a canopy of leaves, casting playful patterns on the ground as Ava ran ahead, her laughter floating back to Dylan and Elena. The city park was bustling with families and couples, the scent of freshly cut grass mingling with the aroma of popcorn and cotton candy from nearby vendors. "Daddy! Elena, hurry up!" Ava called, waving enthusiastically, her face flushed with excitement. Dylan laughed softly, exchanging a gentle glance with Elena as they quickened their pace to catch up. It was Ava's idea, insisting on a family day out, a simple request that felt unexpectedly profound. Dylan had wondered if Elena might feel out of place, but as he watched her smile warmly at Ava's antics, he saw only genuine joy. "Let's ride the carousel first," Ava pleaded, tugging eagerly on their hands. Her eyes sparkled, wide with anticipation. Elena smiled softly, nodding with gentle encouragement. "Lead the way, Ava." Minutes later, Dylan found himself seated beside Elena on the beautifully carved horses, spinning slowly beneath twinkling lights and painted mirrors. Ava, seated proudly on a golden unicorn in front of them, waved back joyfully. "This feels almost surreal," Elena admitted quietly, glancing shyly toward Dylan. Her hair brushed softly against her cheek, catching the sunlight like spun silk. "I never imagined myself here, on a carousel, part of a family." "Me either," Dylan confessed, his voice gentle. "It's been just Ava and me for so long. Seeing her this happy, it means everything." Elena's gaze softened, vulnerability clear in her eyes. "You've raised an amazing girl, Dylan. She has your heart, your kindness." He smiled softly, heart squeezing gently at her words. "She's taken a liking to you, too. More than liking, I think she's started to love you." Elena's breath caught, eyes glistening briefly with emotion. "I hope so, because I've started to love her, too, and maybe—" Her words trailed off as she glanced away shyly, cheeks flushing softly beneath the warm sunlight. "Maybe what?" Dylan prompted gently, voice barely above a whisper. She met his gaze again, a hesitant yet sincere smile forming. "Maybe I've started loving her father, too." His pulse quickened, warmth blossoming rapidly in his chest. Before he could reply, Ava's joyful voice interrupted, laughter bubbling from her lips as she raced toward them. "Come on, there's ice cream!" The three of them sat together moments later, Ava eagerly enjoying her ice cream cone, chocolate smudging her delighted face. Dylan and Elena shared quiet smiles, shoulders touching gently, feeling the closeness growing effortlessly between them. As the afternoon sun sank lower, bathing the park in soft, golden hues, Ava leaned against Elena, yawning contentedly. Elena wrapped an arm around the little girl tenderly, her eyes meeting Dylan's with warmth and quiet understanding. And in that simple moment, Dylan felt something settle deep within him, a quiet certainty that they weren't just pretending anymore. They were becoming something real, something he hadn't dared to believe was possible. The elegant reception hall buzzed softly with whispered conversations, the soft hum of classical music weaving subtly through the air. Dylan stood beside Elena, trying to appear comfortable in his tailored suit, though unease lingered just beneath his carefully composed expression. He was slowly adapting to Elena's glamorous world, but tonight, as the gala swirled around him, he felt distinctly out of place once more. From across the crowded room, a tall figure emerged from the shadows, moving toward them with confident, purposeful strides. Dylan noticed Elena stiffen slightly, tension subtly tightening her jaw. He glanced sideways, recognizing something in her expression, discomfort mixed with caution. "Elena?" the man greeted smoothly, his voice rich and assured, eyes glittering with arrogant confidence. His gaze briefly flickered toward Dylan, amusement lacing his tone. "I heard you were keeping unexpected company these days." Elena's voice was calm, yet icy, guarded. "Richard, I wasn't expecting to see you here." Richard smiled, a slow, charming smirk that sent Dylan's pulse quickening in subtle agitation. "The company insisted I attend. After all, we still have so much history." His words held implications, hanging heavily between them. Dylan felt a sharp pang of jealousy, discomfort twisting in his gut. Elena quickly recovered, forcing a polite smile as she introduced Dylan, her voice steadier than she felt. "Richard, this is Dylan Hayes, my fiance." Richard raised an eyebrow, openly skeptical as he assessed Dylan, his gaze dripping condescension. "Fiance? How charmingly quaint. A mechanic, wasn't it?" Dylan felt his fists clench instinctively, embarrassment burning hotly at the dismissive tone. Elena moved subtly closer, gently resting her hand on his arm, a silent reassurance. Her voice held quiet strength. "Dylan is more honest and genuine than you ever were, Richard." Richard chuckled, eyes glittering with smug amusement. "Perhaps, but honesty doesn't always secure billion-dollar deals, does it?" Dylan's stomach knotted painfully. Each of Richard's pointed words seemed perfectly crafted to highlight the vast difference between himself and Elena's privileged world. He felt suddenly inadequate, ordinary, vulnerable, exposed. Richard finally stepped away, flashing Elena a lingering smile, full of unspoken challenge. "I'm sure we'll talk again soon." As Richard disappeared into the crowd, Dylan exhaled sharply, feeling unsettled. Elena turned to face him, eyes pleading softly for understanding. "Dylan, don't listen to him. He's just trying to get under your skin." Dylan's voice tightened, pride battling insecurity. "Maybe he's right. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe we're fooling ourselves." Elena's eyes flashed with quiet intensity, urgency filling her voice. "You belong exactly where you choose to be, Dylan. Richard uses manipulation because it's all he knows. You're here because of who you are, not because of your title or wealth." He searched her face carefully, seeing genuine sincerity behind her words, yet doubt still gnawed at his confidence, the sharp edge of jealousy still fresh. Dylan nodded slowly, though unease lingered in his chest, wondering if Elena would ever truly be able to leave her past behind, and whether he'd ever feel secure enough to fully trust their future. The mansion felt unnaturally silent, shadows stretching across the polished floors as Dylan paced restlessly through the dimly lit hallways. His thoughts churned in chaotic circles, Richard's smug words replaying incessantly in his mind. Each painful reminder of Elena's past with Richard echoed cruelly, planting seeds of doubt that now refused to loosen their grip. From down the hall, the faint sound of Elena's voice reached him, soft, urgent. Dylan slowed instinctively, hearing her tone sharpen with frustration as she spoke into her phone. He stepped closer to her half-open study door, his heart hammering nervously in his chest. "Richard, I've made it perfectly clear. There is nothing more between us. It's over," Elena whispered fiercely, desperation lacing her voice. Dylan's pulse quickened. Richard's name alone intensified the ache in his chest. Elena's voice trembled slightly as she continued, quieter now. "No, it's not because of the company. Dylan isn't just some arrangement. He matters. This is real." Yet, even as Elena spoke the words he longed to hear, Dylan's own insecurities twisted her meaning. Doubt clouded his judgment, Richard's manipulations still fresh. He stepped back hastily, his chest tightening painfully. Had he been naive, believing Elena truly saw him as more than a practical choice? The study door swung open abruptly. Elena startled to find Dylan standing there, his expression unreadable. She moved toward him instinctively, concern filling her eyes. "Dylan? What's wrong?" He struggled to control the turmoil within him, bitterness edging his voice. "Is this still just a business arrangement to you, Elena? Richard seems convinced it's all strategic." Elena's eyes widened in shock, confusion spreading quickly across her face. "Dylan, how could you think that? You mean everything to me." He shook his head sharply, stepping back. Hurt simmered beneath his carefully guarded expression. "I want to believe that. But seeing you constantly dragged back into Richard's world, it makes me wonder if I'm just fooling myself." "Dylan," Elena pleaded desperately, her voice breaking. "You heard me. I told him clearly, you're who I want." He exhaled sharply, the pain of uncertainty raw in his voice. "I heard you. But maybe that's the problem. I don't know how to fit into your life. Maybe Richard was right. Maybe I don't belong." Elena reached for him, but Dylan moved further back, avoiding her touch, his heart heavy with confusion. Elena stood frozen, pain and helplessness written clearly on her delicate features. "I just need some space," he whispered finally, his voice strained with emotion. She nodded softly, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Please don't walk away from this. From us." His heart twisted painfully, torn between his feelings and fear. "I just need to think." He turned slowly, walking away from the woman he loved, leaving behind the unanswered questions and unspoken truths. As he stepped outside into the quiet night air, doubt weighed heavily upon him, making him question everything he believed, everything he had hoped for. And Elena stood quietly, alone in the dim hallway, her heart aching, as the fragile bond they'd carefully built seemed suddenly to fracture before her eyes. Dylan sat alone on the steps outside his old auto shop, the familiar scent of motor oil and rusted metal surrounding him like a comforting embrace. It was past midnight. Silence stretched across Cedar Creek, punctuated only by the distant hum of passing cars. He'd come here seeking clarity, hoping the simplicity of his old life would offer answers, but instead, all he felt was a deep, unshakable emptiness. He stared blankly into the shadows, Elena's face haunting every thought. The gentle vulnerability she'd shown him, the sincerity in her eyes, the warmth of her voice, all replayed constantly in his mind. Regret began to gnaw at him, each memory of their moments together intensifying the ache in his chest. Dylan realized painfully that what he'd felt wasn't doubt about Elena, it was fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of losing her, fear of truly admitting just how deeply he cared. Across town, Elena sat quietly in the darkened solitude of her elegant bedroom, a faint moonlight illuminating her tear-streaked cheeks. She had always prided herself on being strong, independent, unshakable. Yet now, without Dylan, her carefully crafted world felt hollow and meaningless. Each hour without him clarified something undeniable. Her feelings weren't just a byproduct of their arrangement. She loved Dylan deeply, fiercely, beyond any practical reason. She reached out, fingers brushing softly against a framed photograph on her bedside table. Dylan, Ava, and herself smiling during their family day at the park. It felt like another life, distant and painfully out of reach. Elena's heart tightened. She missed Dylan's reassuring presence, his genuine kindness, the quiet strength he radiated so effortlessly. Both were lost in separate reflections, bound by the same aching longing. Dylan clenched his fists tightly, his pride weakening beneath the weight of undeniable truth. He needed Elena, not for financial security, not for Ava's future, but simply because she had become an inseparable part of him, someone he genuinely loved and admired. In the stillness of the night, Elena realized that she had let fear dictate too much. Her guarded walls had driven away the only man she genuinely trusted, the only one who truly saw her beyond status or wealth. She rose slowly from her bed, determination growing steadily within her. They both knew, as dawn approached softly on the horizon, that life without each other was no longer bearable. Pride, fear, insecurity, all paled against the truth that became clearer with every heartbeat. Dylan knew he had to go back. Elena knew she had to reach out. Neither wanted to spend another moment trapped in the painful silence of separate lives. As morning broke gently over Cedar Creek, both Dylan and Elena quietly resolved to fight for their love, to finally admit openly and bravely that they belonged together, no matter the obstacles still standing in their path. Sunlight streamed harshly through the large windows of Elena's expansive corner office, yet the warmth did nothing to ease the chill that gripped her heart. Elena stood stiffly behind her desk, the polished wood surface scattered with ominous documents. Evidence of betrayal spread painfully before her. Her hands trembled slightly, anger and hurt warring inside her. Across from her, Marcus Davenport wore a carefully composed mask, though Elena recognized the subtle arrogance gleaming in his eyes. He leaned back in the leather chair casually, fingertips pressed together, as though quietly celebrating an inevitable victory. "Marcus, how could you do this?" Elena demanded, voice sharp, yet edged with vulnerability. "You were my father's friend. He trusted you. I trusted you." Marcus's smile was cold, unapologetic. "Trust has little place in business, Elena. Your father understood that better than anyone. It's about survival, control, something you clearly never grasped." She clenched her fists tightly, hurt intensifying beneath her anger. "So this is your idea of control? Selling shares behind my back? Rallying the board against me?" Marcus shrugged, his voice calm and infuriatingly casual. "The board requires leadership, Elena. Stability. Someone strong enough to carry your father's legacy forward. You've made too many reckless decisions, like your arrangement with that mechanic. It weakened confidence. I had no choice." "You had a choice," Elena shot back fiercely. "You chose betrayal." Marcus rose slowly, buttoning his jacket with a practiced ease. "Call it what you will. The board meets tomorrow. They'll make their decision. And frankly, without someone credible beside you, I don't see how you'll retain control." As he exited, leaving Elena alone, silence filled the room, oppressive and suffocating. Elena sank into her chair, the weight of betrayal pressing painfully on her shoulders. Her father's company, her legacy, hung perilously by a thread, threatened by deceit from within. Her thoughts drifted instantly to Dylan. She felt a desperate longing to have him beside her, to draw strength from his calm confidence, his quiet, genuine strength. Tears stung her eyes, regret bitterly mixing with frustration. This crisis was the culmination of every fear she'd carried, losing control, being betrayed by those closest to her. But it also illuminated a deeper truth. She had let pride drive Dylan away precisely when she needed him most. Elena drew a shaky breath, eyes hardening with renewed determination. She wouldn't let Marcus destroy what her father had built, not without a fight. But this was no longer a battle she could face alone. Reaching for her phone, Elena hesitated only briefly, heart pounding as she dialed Dylan's number, praying it wasn't too late to mend what had been broken, and praying he would come back, not just to help save her legacy, but to be by her side through everything that still lay ahead. Dylan stared at his phone, heart racing at the sight of Elena's name, flashing across the screen. He took a deep breath, steadying himself before answering. Elena's voice trembled slightly as she explained everything: the betrayal, Marcus's ruthless plans, and the desperate situation she faced. Every word she spoke tightened Dylan's chest with protectiveness and anger, reigniting a determination he hadn't felt in years. "I'll be right there," Dylan said firmly, his voice leaving no room for doubt or hesitation. Minutes later, he was racing toward Elena's company, heart pounding fiercely, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The drive was brief but felt like an eternity, thoughts swirling chaotically in his mind. Dylan had always believed in fairness, in doing what was right, and right now, Elena needed him more than ever. Entering the towering office building, Dylan moved purposefully through the polished corridors, ignoring the curious glances thrown his way by employees who recognized him only as Elena's mysterious fiance. He pushed open the heavy wooden door to Elena's office, finding her standing by the window, arms folded tightly around herself as she stared out over the city. "Elena," Dylan called gently, his voice instantly steadying her. She turned, relief flooding her eyes at his presence. "You came," she whispered, a mixture of gratitude and vulnerability in her voice. He stepped toward her without hesitation, determination clear in his expression. "Of course I did. You're not facing this alone, Elena. Whatever happens, we'll fight it together." She exhaled softly, tension visibly leaving her shoulders. "I thought I'd lost you." He shook his head gently, sincerity filling his voice. "I let fear cloud everything. I'm here now, Elena. I won't leave again." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the quiet strength of their reunion. Elena reached for Dylan's hand, gripping it tightly, as if drawing courage directly from him. "Marcus convinced the board to meet tomorrow. He plans to remove me, claiming instability," Elena explained, voice trembling with barely restrained anger. Dylan's jaw tightened sharply. "We won't let that happen. You built this company, Elena. Your father trusted you, and so do I. Marcus won't win by playing dirty." She met his gaze, determination reflecting fiercely in her eyes. "I don't know how we stop him, but I know I can't do it without you." He squeezed her hand gently, reassuringly. "You don't have to. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll prove to them, to Marcus, to everyone, that you're stronger than they think." As Dylan stood beside Elena in the quiet sanctuary of her office, the uncertainty of their future faded beneath a stronger truth. Together, they were unstoppable. Dylan knew he had returned not just to fight for Elena's company or legacy, but to fight for the woman he loved, the woman whose courage had awakened something powerful inside him. Now, standing side by side, they prepared to face whatever storm lay ahead, knowing they were finally stronger together. Sunlight poured into the boardroom, reflecting sharply off the expansive, polished conference table. The room was thick with tension, silence heavy as board members shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Elena's steely gaze. Marcus Davenport sat smugly at the far end, his arrogance unmistakably evident. Dylan stood quietly at Elena's side, dressed in a suit that still felt foreign, but now filled him with a sense of purpose. He reached subtly for Elena's hand beneath the table, gently squeezing her fingers in silent reassurance. Elena rose slowly, her presence commanding immediate attention. She spoke calmly, her voice unwavering despite the storm raging inside her. "I built this company with integrity, vision, and values that my father instilled in me, yet some in this room have chosen deceit over loyalty, personal ambition, over honor." Marcus leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension. "Elena, emotional speeches won't change facts. You lack stable leadership and reliable judgment. You've endangered everything your father built." Dylan stepped forward, eyes blazing with quiet intensity. "You're wrong, Marcus. Elena's leadership is exactly what this company needs, someone brave enough to lead honestly without manipulation. Your betrayal doesn't show her weakness, it reveals yours." Marcus scoffed dismissively. You're just a mechanic, Dylan. You don't understand business." "I understand loyalty," Dylan countered firmly, voice steady. "I understand honesty, trust, qualities you've clearly forgotten." Heads around the table nodded slightly, murmurs rippling softly among board members, stirred by Dylan's sincerity. Elena stood taller, confidence surging through her veins. "Marcus, you may think you've won, but you've underestimated the strength of genuine leadership. Leadership isn't just about power. It's about trust, integrity, and the courage to stand firm when others falter." She glanced around the table, meeting each board member's eyes with conviction. "My arrangement with Dylan may have begun unconventionally, but it has become something authentic, rooted in trust and shared values. Stability doesn't come from wealth or connections alone. It comes from character." Silence fell over the room, thick with tension and anticipation. Slowly, one by one, board members began voicing quiet agreement, recognizing the truth in Elena's words. Marcus's smug expression faltered, panic flashing briefly across his features as his allies wavered and retreated. "This company is stronger with Elena at the helm," one senior board member finally declared firmly. "Marcus, your manipulations and betrayal are a disgrace. I move that Elena remains in her rightful position." Murmurs of agreement filled the room, the balance of power shifting decisively back toward Elena. Marcus slumped in his chair, defeat shadowing his features. Elena breathed deeply, relief flooding through her as Dylan's hand tightened reassuringly around hers. After the meeting, as board members dispersed, Elena turned to Dylan, eyes shimmering softly with gratitude and admiration. "You stood by me, Dylan, when it mattered most." He cupped her face gently, sincerity radiating from him. "I'll always stand beside you, Elena. You never have to face anything alone again." In that quiet moment, amid the settling dust of conflict and betrayal, they knew their bond was unbreakable. United, they'd faced the worst together, and together they emerged stronger than ever. The evening air was soft, touched with the gentle fragrance of jasmine that bloomed quietly in Elena's garden. Stars glittered gently overhead, their calm glow a sharp contrast to the turmoil and victory of the day. Dylan stood quietly beside Elena on the secluded terrace, the stillness of the night enveloping them both in a comforting embrace. Elena took a deep breath, letting the tension slowly leave her shoulders as she leaned gently against the stone railing. Dylan watched her quietly, noting the way moonlight highlighted the delicate contours of her face. His heart quickened, thoughts tumbling restlessly within him. They had faced betrayal and conflict together, but he knew one final truth still remained unspoken between them. "I couldn't have done this without you, Dylan," Elena whispered, finally breaking the gentle silence. Her eyes filled with sincerity as she met his gaze. "When Marcus turned against me, I thought I'd lost everything, but I was wrong, because even in the worst moment, I had you." Dylan stepped closer, voice low, vulnerable in the quiet night. "You've always had me, Elena. From the first day you walked into my shop, even when I tried to deny it, you had me completely." Elena's eyes softened, glistening faintly with tears as she gently reached for his hand, holding it tightly. "I've spent my life guarding my heart, afraid of being hurt again. But now, being with you, I'm not afraid anymore. I love you, Dylan, truly, deeply, more than I ever thought possible." His breath caught in his throat, the raw honesty in her voice overwhelming him. He cupped her face softly, his thumb gently brushing across her cheek. "I love you too, Elena. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, to Ava. You're everything." Elena smiled softly, a beautiful, vulnerable smile full of quiet joy. She leaned gently into his touch, her eyes searching his with newfound certainty. "I've waited my whole life to feel this, to trust someone completely. You've given me that, Dylan. You've given me a home." He pulled her gently toward him, heart racing with a mixture of relief and quiet exhilaration. And you've given me something I didn't think existed, a second chance, a future, real happiness." Their faces moved closer, drawn together by the gentle gravity of shared truth. Dylan's lips brushed softly against Elena's, a tender, lingering kiss that sealed every unspoken promise. Beneath the quiet glow of moonlight, every barrier between them dissolved, leaving only honesty, vulnerability, and an overwhelming sense of belonging. When they pulled apart, breathless and deeply moved, Elena rested her forehead gently against his, eyes closed, savoring the intimacy of their newfound connection. Dylan held her close, feeling their hearts beat in steady harmony, knowing they had finally found something truly worth fighting for: love, honest and enduring, rooted firmly in trust and acceptance. The soft glow of twilight gently filled the garden, painting everything in hues of lavender and gold. Elena stood silently near the ornate fountain, her heart fluttering nervously within her chest. Dylan would be home soon, and though she had rehearsed the words countless times, anxiety still tightened her throat. This moment felt different, far more significant than their initial arrangement. This time, the words would come straight from her heart, genuine and raw. The gentle crunch of gravel beneath Dylan's boots startled Elena from her thoughts. She turned, her pulse quickening, as Dylan approached, his eyes warm and curious. He noticed immediately that Elena seemed unusually nervous, a vulnerability in her gaze that he'd rarely seen before. "Everything all right?" Dylan asked softly, concern gently shading his voice. Elena nodded slowly, stepping closer, gathering her courage as her voice trembled slightly. "There's something I need to say, something important." Dylan's eyes softened, waiting patiently, his steady presence calming her racing heart. She took a deep, steadying breath, reaching gently for Dylan's hands, holding them tightly as she met his gaze. "When I first asked you to marry me, it was an arrangement, built on necessity and business. I never imagined it would become more, but it has. It's become something real, honest, something I can't live without." Dylan squeezed her fingers gently, understanding dawning warmly in his eyes. "Elena," she shook her head softly, determination surging within her. "Please let me finish. You've given me trust, loyalty, unconditional support. You've shown me what genuine love looks like. I don't want an arrangement anymore. I want a life with you, Dylan, a future built on real love." Emotion tightened Dylan's throat, his expression filled with tenderness and quiet joy. Elena reached into her pocket, hands shaking slightly as she revealed a simple velvet box. She opened it slowly, the delicate diamond ring catching the last of the twilight glow. "Dylan," Elena whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, sincerity radiating from every word. "I'm asking you, truly and genuinely, from the depths of my heart, will you marry me? Not as an arrangement, not as a business partnership, but because I love you and I want to spend my life with you." Dylan's breath caught sharply, eyes glistening softly with tears. His voice was gentle, filled with warmth and sincerity. "Yes, Elena, of course I'll marry you, because I love you more deeply than I ever thought possible." With a relieved, joyful laugh, Elena slipped the ring carefully onto Dylan's finger, tears spilling freely down her cheeks as she looked up into his eyes. Dylan leaned forward, capturing her lips in a kiss filled with tenderness and profound emotion, sealing their promise beneath the gentle glow of twilight. In that beautiful, vulnerable moment, standing together in the quiet of the garden, their hearts beat as one, united not by convenience or necessity, but by an honest, enduring love that neither had ever imagined they would find. Sunlight poured softly through the open windows, filling the cozy sitting room with a golden glow. Elena sat cross-legged on the plush rug, surrounded by magazines, fabric swatches, and handwritten lists. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she held up a soft, ivory lace sample, glancing toward Dylan, who sat opposite her with gentle amusement in his eyes. "Do you like this one?" Elena asked, her voice hopeful, yet slightly uncertain, revealing a sweetness Dylan had rarely seen before. Or is it too traditional? Dylan leaned forward, touching the delicate fabric gently with his fingertips, a warm smile tugging at his lips. It's beautiful, but honestly, Elena, it doesn't matter to me as long as it makes you happy. Elena's cheeks flushed softly, and she shook her head lightly, eyes glistening with quiet emotion. It matters to me, Dylan. This wedding, I want it to represent us, truly. Nothing extravagant, just simple and meaningful. He reached forward, gently taking her hand, holding it softly in his own. Then we keep it simple. Just our closest friends and family. No spectacle, just real moments. Elena squeezed his hand tightly, a soft sigh of relief escaping her lips. Thank you. I spent my whole life surrounded by grandeur and spectacle. But this, what we have, is too precious, too real, for anything superficial. Suddenly, Ava bounded into the room, her small arms loaded with wildflowers from the garden, her face beaming with excitement. "Look what I picked for the wedding," she announced proudly, scattering colorful blossoms onto the rug around them. Elena laughed gently, pulling Ava into a tight, affectionate embrace. "They're perfect, sweetheart." Ava turned earnestly toward Dylan, eyes wide with excitement. "Daddy, can I walk with you at the wedding? I want to be part of it too." Dylan chuckled softly, his heart swelling with pride and love. "Of course you can. We wouldn't have it any other way." Later, as evening settled gently over the mansion, Dylan and Elena stood quietly on the terrace, overlooking the gardens. Strings of delicate lights now lined the trees, softly illuminating the intimate spot they'd chosen for the ceremony. Elena leaned into Dylan's embrace, her voice soft, reflecting quiet contentment. "I never imagined my life would turn out this way, Dylan. But now, planning our wedding, having Ava excitedly involved, it feels more right than anything I've ever known." Dylan's lips brushed gently against her temple, his voice filled with tenderness. "I didn't think I'd ever trust anyone like this again. But you've changed everything. Our wedding won't just be a ceremony, it'll be a promise, one I'll spend my life keeping." As they stood quietly beneath the softly glowing lights, surrounded by the fragrant scent of wildflowers, Dylan and Elena knew their wedding preparations weren't just about details or decorations. They were about celebrating the rare, beautiful love that had brought them together, a bond built firmly on trust, sincerity, and heartfelt promises. A gentle breeze rustled softly through the garden, whispering through the delicate strings of lights woven among the trees, bathing everything in a soft golden glow. Friends and family gathered quietly beneath the fading twilight, faces glowing warmly with anticipation and happiness. Dylan stood at the end of a simple aisle, beneath a gracefully woven arch adorned with Ava's hand-picked wildflowers, his heart pounding rapidly with emotion and excitement. A hush fell over the small gathering as Ava appeared, her face radiant with pride, carefully scattering flower petals along the path. Dylan's throat tightened gently at the sight of his daughter, her bright eyes shining with pure joy. Then the crowd quietly rose as Elena emerged, the breath catching sharply in Dylan's chest at the vision before him. Elena moved gracefully down the aisle, her simple ivory gown flowing gently around her. Her eyes locked onto Dylan's, shimmering softly with love and vulnerability, each step drawing her closer to the man she had chosen, the man who had truly captured her heart. Dylan's eyes never left her face, the raw honesty of the moment overwhelming him. As Elena reached his side, Dylan took her hands in his, steadying each other with the quiet strength of their bond. They stood beneath the arch, their gazes unwavering, surrounded by the warmth of those who loved them. When Dylan spoke, his voice was thick with emotion, yet strong enough for every word to resonate clearly. "Elena, I never expected this. I never expected you. But standing here, looking into your eyes, I see clearly now, every struggle, every heartbreak. It all led me to you. You're my second chance, the love I never thought I'd find. I promise to cherish you, to protect you, to honor you every day for the rest of our lives." Elena's eyes filled with tears, her voice soft and heartfelt as she responded, "Dylan, you taught me trust, honesty, and true kindness. You loved me for who I am, not what I had or what I could give. You and Ava became my family, my home. You've given me more than I ever dreamed possible. Today, in front of everyone we love, I promise you my whole heart, always." There was barely a dry eye among the guests as they exchanged rings, simple symbols of their honest and profound commitment. Finally, as Dylan gently cupped Elena's face, leaning forward to seal their vows with a tender kiss, applause erupted softly around them, heartfelt and joyous. Ava quickly joined them, wrapping her small arms tightly around their legs, her laughter ringing clearly through the garden. Elena knelt softly, embracing Ava with warmth and affection, while Dylan watched quietly, a deep gratitude swelling within him. As night settled gently around them, beneath a canopy of stars and softly glowing lights, Dylan, Elena, and Ava stood quietly together, no longer bound by an arrangement or convenience, but by love, honest and unwavering, forged through trials and cemented by trust. Theirs was now a family, deeply united, and ready to face anything that lay ahead, hand in hand and heart to heart. Warm morning sunlight spilled softly through the kitchen windows, illuminating the cozy space with gentle, golden tones. Dylan stood quietly at the counter, sipping coffee as he watched Elena and Ava set the breakfast table, their laughter filling the room like music. For the first time in a long time, Dylan felt true peace, an unshakable happiness that warmed him deep inside. Elena glanced up, catching his gaze, her eyes sparkling softly as she smiled. "Are you planning to help, or just enjoy the view?" she teased gently, warmth radiating from her voice. Dylan chuckled, stepping toward her, slipping an affectionate arm around her waist. "Both. I like seeing you two happy." Ava looked up from placing napkins, her eyes bright and earnest. "We're a real family now, right? Forever?" Elena knelt softly, gently cupping Ava's cheek. "Forever, sweetheart. Nothing could ever change that." After breakfast, Dylan and Elena sat together on the porch swing, gently swaying as they watched Ava play in the garden. Elena leaned her head softly against Dylan's shoulder, sighing contentedly. "It feels different now. Everything we have, it's ours, truly ours." Dylan nodded gently, tightening his embrace. "It's because we built it on honesty, Elena. We fought hard to get here, and that makes it stronger." She lifted her eyes to his, vulnerability and sincerity clear in her gaze. "Sometimes I still worry about the past, about mistakes, betrayals, things I can't change. But when I look at you and Ava, I know I have everything I'll ever need." Dylan gently brushed his lips against her forehead, his voice quietly reassuring. "We can't change the past, Elena, but we can decide the future. And our future, it's built on trust, love, and family. Nothing else matters." That evening, as stars gently lit the night sky, Dylan stood quietly in Ava's bedroom doorway, watching Elena tuck her in tenderly, softly humming a lullaby. Ava's eyes fluttered closed, her breathing deepening as she drifted into peaceful sleep. Elena quietly stepped out, meeting Dylan's gaze in the dim hallway, warmth radiating softly between them. Together, they walked hand in hand down the hallway, pausing to glance at framed photographs newly arranged along the walls, moments captured from their journey, from quiet mornings to playful afternoons, their wedding day surrounded by loved ones, smiles filled with authentic joy. Reaching their room, Dylan gently turned Elena toward him, softly brushing a strand of hair from her face, voice tender with sincerity. This is the life I dreamed about, Elena. Simple, genuine, with someone I love completely." Elena's eyes glistened gently, filled with quiet happiness. "We made it real, Dylan. Our family, our home, it's everything." He nodded softly, pulling her close, savoring the warmth and certainty of her embrace. As they stood quietly in the gentle darkness, hearts beating steadily together, they knew their fresh start wasn't just a new chapter. It was the beginning of a story they'd write together, one filled with genuine love, trust, and the beautiful simplicity of being exactly where they belonged. Soft twilight blanketed Cedar Creek, painting the quiet town in hues of deep violet and muted gold. Dylan stood beside Elena on their porch, the evening breeze gently brushing against their faces, whispering memories of a past that now felt distant yet beautifully significant. They watched Ava running playfully through the yard, her laughter echoing joyfully beneath the stars, a carefree sound that filled both their hearts with warmth. Dylan exhaled deeply, pulling Elena gently closer, savoring the quiet intimacy. His eyes reflected softly, nostalgia filling his voice as he spoke. It's strange, isn't it? One simple choice, a single moment, changed everything. Elena turned slowly toward him, her eyes shining gently with emotion. If you hadn't stopped that rainy night, Dylan, if you hadn't helped me without expecting anything in return, none of this would exist. It still amazes me how fate can hinge on such small acts. He nodded softly, his gaze distant, yet deeply thoughtful. I never thought my life would be like this, filled with happiness, family, love. It felt impossible, out of reach, until you. Elena gently touched his face, her fingers brushing tenderly against his cheek. You taught me to trust again, to let down walls I never imagined lowering. Because of you, I have a family, something I never believed I'd find. They stood silently, breathing in the soft, fragrant night air, the depth of their journey settling gently between them. Dylan's eyes drifted toward Ava, his voice thickening with quiet gratitude. And Ava, seeing her thrive, witnessing her joy every day, it's everything to me. Elena smiled warmly, nodding softly. She's incredible, Dylan. She made me realize what it truly means to belong, to love unconditionally. Their eyes met, understanding flowing effortlessly between them, born of shared struggles and shared victories. Dylan gently tilted Elena's chin upward, meeting her gaze with unwavering sincerity. This love we have, it's stronger than I ever imagined, and it all started with kindness, honesty, trust. We built it piece by piece. She leaned softly into his embrace, her voice tender, yet filled with conviction. I believe now that true love finds us precisely when we least expect it, exactly when we need it most. We were meant to meet that night, Dylan. I truly believe that. He held her closer, the warmth of her presence calming his soul. They remained quietly entwined, watching Ava joyfully chase fireflies, her laughter a beautiful reminder of how far they'd come. Dylan felt peace wash over him, gratitude swelling within his heart. His life had changed forever, through a simple act of kindness, a choice made without expectation or reward. Under the gentle starlight, Dylan and Elena knew that their journey was no mere coincidence. It was proof that destiny could appear in the simplest moments, guiding them toward a happiness that felt as infinite as the sky above. And as Ava ran toward them, smiling and breathless, Dylan realized he'd never imagined a future so beautifully real, so perfectly theirs.